Thank you all for the invitation. It's been quite some time since I've had an opportunity to come here and visit with you all. Of course, being that it seems like since since Inauguration Day, we seem to have not stopped. The legislature seems to have almost been in session almost right after that, and continuously so. And so there's been a number of issues which we've had an opportunity to weigh in on. And when there was a discussion of me coming and speaking to y'all today, I thought that two of the most, at least written about issues this session that concerned me were both the budget for the Department of Justice and the Sanctuary Cities bill that Valerie Hodges put up, HB 1148. And so I thought I'd discuss both of those issues with y'all briefly, and then allow some opportunities to get some questions answered that maybe you hadn't had an opportunity to ask. You know, the first issue I think I'll take up is the Sanctuary Cities bill, because that is actually coming up in June 8 tomorrow. You know, one of the problems that I think we face here in this country is a disregard for the rule of law. And you know, there were a couple of very well-known criminologists who in the 80s produced a theory called the broken windows theory. And that theory basically said that if we allow small fractions of the law to continue to go unenforced, that would only breed to additional crime. And so, and I embrace that. I think that's true. Because what we have found is that when we allow people to come into this country illegally, okay, and then we blatantly allow them to stay, and then we confer a right on them greater than we confer on on the citizens in this country, then I believe we have a problem, and the rule of law has absolutely broken down. And so I worked with both Representative Valerie Hodges and Representative Jay Morris. Each of them had a bill. Both of those bills, one, Valerie's bill was like a crime bill, I called it, and Jay's was like a victim's rights bill. And what Valerie's bill does is, and that's the one that's going to be up in Judiciary A tomorrow, what it does, it says that if a municipality or political subdivision of the state engages in a sanctuary city policy, of which the definition of what that policy is clearly spelled out in the bill, then that would prohibit that municipality or political subdivision from accessing public financing through the bond commission. And we think it's a very common sense bill. And so let me explain to you all, because I know there's been a lot of questions as to, well, what is a sanctuary city policy? Well, I'll give you an example. Each of you all, if you're here legally, or you're either naturalized or you were born in the United States and are a citizen, goes down the road and you're caught speeding. The police pull you over. The law enforcement officer comes out of his car. He says, "Can I see your driver's license?" You hand him your driver's license. What does he do? He takes that driver's license back to his vehicle. Why does he do that? Did any of y'all ever thought, why does he do that? He does that in order to check your criminal background, if you have any, your criminal history, and whether or not you're wanted in another jurisdiction or not. He checks the criminal background to give him a greater appreciation for the person whom he stopped. One, to know, has this person ever been in trouble with the law? Have they ever violated any statute here in the state of Louisiana or any other jurisdiction? He also checks to find out if you're wanted in another jurisdiction. Why? So that he helps other law enforcement agencies around the country. It's a collaboration to bring people to justice, to bring people back to a jurisdiction that wants that particular person for a violation of the law. All right, so let's say that you're an illegal alien traveling in New Orleans, and and you break the law there. You're stopped for speeding. Well, first, you shouldn't have a driver's license because we don't issue driver's licenses to people who are not citizens. Well, when the officer asks, can I see your driver's license? And you tell him no, that's a problem. Then he has to determine who you are. If he has a reasonable suspicion that you're here in this country illegally, he has to stop the interrogation. He doesn't have the ability to then go back and check Immigration and Customs Most Wanted list. He doesn't have the ability to check the Global Terrorist Watch list. He has to stop his investigation. He is prohibited from collaborating with federal law enforcement authorities. That is in the plain black and white text of the New Orleans Police Department's current policy. That is a problem because what that does is it creates safe harbors. If you are running one of the notorious Mexican cartel operations out of Mexico, where would you send your people? You would send them into cities that safe harbor illegals, because if they are stopped for a minor infraction of the law, you don't have to worry about them being deported. You see the problem we create here? That is why this bill is so important. And we are working, last week in the Senate committee, there were a number of questions, good questions that were brought up by some senators concerning due process. Let me be clear. The bill, even in its current form, in no way takes away a municipality or political subdivision's due process access to the courts. However, if the legislature wants to add additional due processes, I am in no way against that. I have no problem with that. That being said, I am against any attempt to take the enforcement mechanism out of the bill. We're going to see what happens on that bill tomorrow in due day. The second issue that seems to have got a little bit of ink is my attempt to have my own budget. Let me make sure that y'all understand how this all started. All of the statewide elected officials during the special session were required to go before the legislature and to ask them the effects of certain cuts, how certain cuts would have on the particular departments that they would run when we were in that fiscal dilemma. Remember? During that testimony, Secretary of State Shedler became very frustrated, both at the Appropriations Committee and at the Senate Finance. I shared with him that frustration of not being able to adequately shift resources inside of our office and consistently having to go to the Division of Administration and their mounds of regulations to determine how I could effectively allocate those resources to create those efficiencies in the office. The legislature, in response to that, said they understood and challenged us to give them an opportunity or an answer to that. Chairman Henry wrote a bill, House Bill 105, as a place marker in giving the Secretary of State the opportunity to give him his own budget and that flexibility. I agreed to partner with him in that. We wanted to make sure it was a good fit. We had the ability and the resources to ensure that we could write a bill that was not contrary to the statute or to the Constitution. At the last minute, then Senator, former Senator, the Secretary decided to withdraw from the bill, leaving us alone. I can understand the Secretary's position in that. However, I think it's important that constitutional officers be afforded the ability to control their budgets with legislative oversight. Nothing in the bill confers additional power on the Attorney General. This simply gives a constitutional officer, who I might add, the governor is one as well, the ability to manage his money with the oversight being the proper oversight, that being the legislature. When you don't have that, you then have a friction that exists between the governor and those statewide, or the ability for a conflict and that friction to exist. Because if I do something that is contrary to what the governor wants, he has the ability through the division to frustrate the ability of my expenditures. That's not how the Constitution was designed to work. That's not a proper exercise of Louisiana's Constitution. There was a reason that those who wrote the Constitution created those separate constitutional offices that were elected on the same, in the same manner that the governor was. There was a reason they wanted to separate them. Having the governor have the ability to control the purse over those statewide is not the proper way that the Constitution dictates the ability of the Attorney General to facilitate his office. In addition, it also restricts me from being able to create the types of efficiencies you all have been claiming need to be done inside of state government. There's been a tremendous amount of frustration here in this state over the ability of the legislature to get their hands around financing. Well, guess what? When you separate those budgets, when you allow different appropriations bills to move through, those legislators, I know I was one as a member of the U.S. House, have an opportunity to clearly see what's being spent. I used this and I was criticized for it, but look, I ask you this question. If I offer y'all, and I know many of y'all are journalists, so you naturally like to read, but if I come to you and I bring you a book and it's this thick, or I bring you 6 books that are this thick and ask you to choose which one you're going to read, which one you're going to pick up? You're going to pick up the books that are broken up into smaller pieces. That's just inherently what we do as humans. I know. I'm guilty of doing the same. So the whole issue of bringing about this change was an opportunity to put before the legislature an opportunity to budget in a different manner. And I'll close with this. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is the complete definition of insanity. If we don't allow our elected officials to think and work outside the box and then expect them to solve the problems that we're consistently facing here in this state, we are kidding ourselves. So those are 2 issues that I thought that were important to you all. I hope that we've explained, I've explained both of those issues in a manner that gives you an opportunity to get some feedback on them. And I welcome any questions that you